this generated the script. The big difference between this and your first 2 or 3 films is that this was made with 5 people, basically, in the crew. Whereas I think in Casa de Lava, it's probably dozens or hundreds of people. And this, of course, makes it a much more intimate sort of setting, but also your way of generating the film became different, I would think. That it was actually it was a collaboration between you and Ventura to a large extent, right?
Yeah, it began a bit earlier than I decided to abandon a little bit the writing of films, of screenplays, which I did for 3 films plus some shorts. I had to do it. I wasn't like everybody has to do it, or even like to do it. But the script and the time you're allowed to do a film still today, the weeks that you're allowed, at least in Europe, especially the way a film crew is organized, and it's with its hierarchy and all the departments and the specialities and all its vices almost, all its. I lived that very. I couldn't deal with that, and so after a 3rd feature, I started wondering and thinking, and it was a moment of a little bit of crisis. I wanted to change a lot of things, and I decided to be a bit far away from this way of doing, and so I bought a small video camera. That was the time when they came out, and I thought it was possible to begin doing something closer to documentary, or just another, and maybe alone, maybe with 1 or 2 friends. And this, I thought all of this, but I had a sort of ground that supported all of this idea. I had met this community, and I was brought more or less to this neighborhood, to the neighborhood where they lived. And I thought this could be a sort of center for me to do at least 1 first film, maybe 2. And I stayed. That's what happened. I did 1, and then I stayed, and I did another one, and I became very close to them, and this new way of producing, because that's what it was. I was my own producer. In fact, I became a producer much more. That's what I felt. I became all my problems became production problems, not direction. It seemed that everything that was artistic, or the story, all the elements that are more on the side of art in the film were given to me in that place, were there for me to discover, to find.
Well, one thing I'm particularly curious about is that a lot of horse money comes across like dreams or nightmares and so on. Were these based on actual dreams that Ventura had to an extent? Yeah.
A lot of them, they are, especially this long sequence that in this elevator was built around some things that that he told me, very enigmatic things, and of a man all dressed in iron or steel, with a steel helmet, and that was chasing him all around the city and in the hospital where he was for a moment. And this guy wanted to kill him. I asked him to even to draw me the figure, and he left it always very mysterious, very enigmatic. So I had to find for myself. I didn't find. I just one day was in the street and I saw one of those street artists, you know, that do statues, or living statues, or and he was dressed like the soldier, which I immediately associated as one of the soldiers, the young soldiers of the revolution. So that made sense, and I started working on that. There's something else that I probably should say, it has to do a lot with this dreamy, this a bit loose and side. The film is completely a little bit vague on that. This started also, one of the starting points was a work, a musical work I was supposed to do with a musician, composer from New York that I met 2 or 3 years before this film. I met him because I saw a photograph of him in the New York Times or somewhere, or in a magazine, and he looked exactly like Ventura, with a cap and a hat, and the same look, the same, and this man was Gil Scott-Heron. I don't know if you know, I've heard of him. He was a poet, a musician, some people say one of the fathers of rap, but I think he's much more than that, more and less. I mean, he was an important man in soul music or rhythm and blues and other forms of music. And I got in touch with him just because I was so fascinated by this resemblance, and he answered. And I sent him the film before this one with Ventura. He liked it, and
Colossal Youth,
and he liked it, and we decided to meet. I met him once at his house, and then we met at my house, and then he died. And in those 2 meetings, actually, he was much more decided to do it than me. It was a very strange project. The idea was to do what he called a long prayer. He would write a poem, 2 hours, with a duration of 1.5, 2 hours, that Ventura would sing and say, mainly for him, and that I would film, and he would come to the shooting and play his electric piano live. So this was super difficult, even technically wise, and I was a bit afraid, but I was very excited, and he was really pushing the thing. And then he died. He was addicted to a lot of things, and he died. And so I think still today that these elevators, especially the elevator sequence, has something to do with that. This voice, or those lots of voices that come across, have certainly something to do with that project, that idea.
Yeah. One of the eeriest things about it is the fact that that you hear these voices without there being lip sync. So anyway, I'm sure there are people here who must have questions. So there's somebody with I think in the audience with a mic, so we can all hear you. If you'd like to ask something, raise your hand. We can't see very well from here, but
We got one right here.
Yeah, I've just, this is the second film of yours I've seen in which characters express some sort of a desire to return to the water, and I thought that was really interesting because I had read one of your interviews in which you said something about how you could never film the sea because Strobe and Huye had taken that from you. I was just wondering if you could speak to that, because I'm very curious.
Return to the water? You sure?
Fairly sure. In this and in the beginning of Colossal You?
In this one? Where? How? Where?
Just a one-off, I think somewhat early in the film. I believe it's my first time seeing it.
I don't know. And anyway, well, there's water and water. If you're talking about the ocean, I'm very afraid. If it's water, hot water in our bathroom, I'm okay with it. But no, I've always said that, you know, everything that is not. After I did Casa de Lava, which was a film shot in Cabo Verde, so from where they are, their country, their islands, I shot a film there. That's how I met them. I encountered them. That was a film that left a lot of marks and for me, and it was very difficult to shoot. It was a big production, international, European, with actors and boats and things, helicopters, and we didn't need anything of that, but it's the way film is, cinema is. And that film made me think and put, like we say, put in perspective and gave me some clues or some keys to what I really liked in film, what I wanted to do, and also some things that I didn't know how to do or felt to me difficult, like shooting, filming the ocean, nature, mountains, forests, nature, let's say, the living world, nature. Because I immediately thought, and I thought I was right, and I prefer to be closer to people, human beings, that are confined in spaces that are very human. I mean, human in the sense they are houses and made by hands and with bricks and
it's interesting because there are shots in Casa de Lava where are landscape shots, but if you look very carefully, and you have to see it on a big screen, you see that there are actually people at the very bottom.
Yeah.
And so it's in a way, I see so much of your work as, again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, like almost a tug of war between portraiture and narrative in some way.
I've always, since that moment, maybe because the other films I was living them in the days, and I was a bit unconscious. I became much more aware of everything. But that's the case for every filmmaker, I think. I mean, if they're not very completely stupid, I would say, they have to be more and more conscious of of their means of production, and what they want to say and how and etc. So I always felt a bit, not a bit, a lot, an imposter when there was no one in the shot. It's very strange. Maybe I'm sure a lot of some filmmakers feel the same, but they don't confess. No, it has to do with the origins of cinema. It's something made for humans, I think, not for, you know, painting is something else, and experimental cinema, it's again something else. It's a room of cinema that is a bit apart. I think cinema was born with this movement, a human movement, and a human life in a sort of reality. I mean, in cities, maybe also a little bit in exotic places, but mainly in big cities, and that's how it was born, and it's a social thing. You see society, you don't. So I always felt a bit not knowing how to place my camera when I was in such a situation. So you're right. Even in Casa de Lava, I was in such a. I was always asking the assistants to place someone very, very far, even a silhouette, just to calm me down, because it's like objects. It's the same thing, and I'm not saying that all the films that I admire, just thinking of Ozu immediately, are full of spaces and objects and that are a bit absent from. Actually, that's the great art of Ozu. It's through absence show the people that inhabit.